like stroke, if someone has a traumatic brain injury, if somebody is severely depressed, or if somebody has psychosis, in other words, they lose touch in reality. Also, we have conditions like vitamin B12 deficiency, or if someone has an intellectual disability. Now, again, I would want to stress here that conditions are either temporary and reversible, while others are progressive. So, as a psychiatrist, what do I assess? In my assessment, I ensure that I take a good medical history, and this is important because I would want to know whether the condition, what the person is having, is acute or if it is chronic. In other words, if it's something that recently began or if it's something that started a long time ago. I also want to know whether the symptoms are worsening, whether the symptoms are improving. I will also assess the person's mental state, do a mental status examination of the person, assess their cognition, also assess their functional abilities, and see whether they have good insight and judgment into their condition. And as I said earlier, most importantly is the ability to understand the consequences of the decision that they make. Now, the assessment may differ depending on whether the person is deciding about, let's say, their finances, their medical treatments, their living arrangements, signing a legal document, etc. Now, in assessing someone's cognition, there are 6 domains that I look at. First of all, I look at the complex attention. By this, I look to see whether the person has difficulty concentrating, how their processing speed is, if it is very slow, if they're easily distracted. Secondly, their executive functioning, in other words, whether they can solve problems without any difficulty, whether they can plan, whether their judgment is good, whether the organization is good. Also, their learning and memory, in other words, whether they forget easily, whether they can recall whatever was said, be it if they recall is short term or long term, whether they have repetitions when they have questions. Also, their language, in other words, whether they have their comprehension skill, their social cognition, whether they have empathy, whether they have good social judgment. Now, when should families seek an assessment? You need to look at some of the warning signs. Among them, we have things like persons forgetting to pay their bills, or persons being exploited financially, persons repeatedly giving away their money or getting lost, or who have difficulty in managing their medication, persons who have unsafe living conditions, and persons who have inability to understand important decisions. Now, key messages I want you to take care of. Every adult should be presumed capable unless there is evidence otherwise. Also, we need to support the decision-making capacity whenever it is possible. And guardianship should be the last resort. And it should be done usually only when necessary and in the person's best interest. Now, some key messages I want you to take care. Growing older does not mean losing decision-making capacity. Dementia is not the same as incapacity. Capacity should be assessed carefully and objectively, and older persons deserve dignity, respect, and the least restrictive interventions. And important, though, is that families should plan ahead before a crisis occurs. Do not wait until the very end to try to make these decisions. Now, in Dominica, the Mental Health Act of 1987, it does not contain provisions for advanced planning in the form of psychiatric advice directives, advanced decisions, or advanced statements. The Act is primarily concerned with admission to the psychiatric hospital, the care and treatment of persons with mental illnesses, the management of the property and affairs of persons, and the administrative and procedural matters related to psychiatric care. Now, these are the features. These features, they are found in more modern mental health legislations, such as in countries such as Australia, India, parts of Canada, and some of US jurisdictions, where individuals with capacity can record their treatment preferences to be followed if they later lose decision-making capacity. Now, this is an area that's maybe worth considering in Dominica, considering especially as we continue to review and strengthen the legal framework for mental health and aging. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wallace. Did you get the red card, or you finished with the red? Also, you owe us some more, man. Yes. Okay, so we heard from Dr. Nadia Wallace, and you will have the opportunity to ask the questions. And one of the things that I noted that she said, which is something that we probably need to take into consideration, is that the Mental Health Act, where someone can apply for receivership or guardianship, does not make provision for advanced planning, where you can make the decision as to who you would want to take care of your business for you should the need arise. And this is something that we probably have to look at, because it happens in other countries, and we can look into how we can improve our law. Not just when it happens, but where you can make the decision as to what should happen. So we move quickly on to the next panelist. And the other panelist is Marie-Therese Jonker. Marie-Therese Jonker is the Chief Executive Officer and founder of Premium Home and Residential Care Services, FACS. FACS has been in operation since 2014. That makes it 12 years, according to the maths. And it prides itself as the trailblazer in doing activities with seniors and taking residents out in the community. FACS has taken the bold step to team up with Lifeline Ministries, headed by Tina Alexander, to organize dementia-friendly events. Ms. Jonker is very passionate about dementia, one of the conditions that affects multiple areas of mental and emotional function. Ms. Jonker has a passion for seniors, and she hosts a radio program on DBS on matters related to seniors. She will be giving you the benefit of her experience, and she'll also speak about safeguarding. So, help me to welcome Ms. Marie-Therese Jonker.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to have to speak really quickly because you know I like to talk a lot, and I saw those cards being flashed. So, first of all, I want to thank the Dominica Council on Aging for inviting me to participate in what I believe is one of the most important discussions we can have as a society. It is a privilege to share this platform with such an experienced panel of professionals. As you've heard, my name is Marie-Therese Jonker. I am the founder and chief executive of Premium Home and Residential Care Services, FACS. For the past 12 years, my team and I have had the privilege of supporting older persons and their families throughout Dominica, both in their own homes and within our residential care facilities. You've heard Dr. Nadia Wallace, who has helped us to understand the important issues surrounding mental capacity and decision-making. You're going to be hearing from distinguished attorneys who will explain the legal rights of older persons and legal remedies available when those rights are violated. You will also hear from our banking professionals who will discuss financial exploitation and the safeguards available through our financial institutions. My role today is going to be slightly different. Today, the question I'm going to be asking is, what does a life free from elder abuse actually look like? Because if we can answer that question, perhaps we can prevent abuse before it happens. The World Health Organization defines elder abuse as a single or repeated act or lack of appropriate action occurring within any relationship where there is an expectation of trust which causes harm or distress to an older person. Think about those words carefully. A relationship where there is an expectation of trust. It is important because it reminds us that elder abuse is rarely committed by strangers. It's usually somebody you know, somebody you love, somebody you trust. The World Health Organization estimates that around 1 in 6 people aged 60 years and older experience some form of abuse every year, and financial abuse is recognized as one of the major forms of elder abuse. WHO, the World Health Organization, also tells us that we have far too little data in our region about the true scale of the problem. But the absence of statistics in the Caribbean does not mean the absence of abuse. It simply means that we need to become better at recognizing it. That brings me to a word that I want everybody to remember today: safeguarding. It is a word that's used every day in health and social care, but many people outside our profession have never heard it. So, what is safeguarding? The CARE Act in the UK defines safeguarding as protecting an adult's right to live in safety, free from abuse and neglect. It is about people and organizations working together to prevent and stop both the risks and the experience of abuse and neglect, while promoting the person's well-being and respecting their wishes, feelings, and beliefs. It means recognizing risks. The World Health Organization also states that safeguarding means protecting an adult's right to live safely, free from abuse and neglect. It is about preventing harm, recognizing risk, responding appropriately when concerns arise, and always promoting that person's well-being, wishes, and rights. It's not about simply reacting after the event has occurred. It's about preventing it in the first place. In simple language, safeguarding basically means protecting somebody before the harm occurs. It means recognizing the risk, preventing the abuse, and speaking up when something doesn't feel right. Protecting dignity, protecting property, protecting finances, protecting legal rights. That is why I say today, legal rights do not protect themselves. We need to protect the older person's voice, and we're halfway through. The legal right to make decisions. A person may have a legal right to own property, manage their own finances, and make decisions. The legal right to make a will, the legal right to refuse treatment, the legal right to decide where they live. But those rights become vulnerable when someone becomes frail, dependent, and isolated, or loses cognitive capacity. And that's where safeguarding begins. People often ask me, what does FARCS do? Of course, everybody knows we provide care for older persons. But after 12 years, I've come to believe that perhaps our most important role is not simply providing care, it's safeguarding. We safeguard dignity, independence, informed consent, finances, and legal rights. Because being a good caregiver is much more than someone who just assists with helping you to get dressed or preparing meals. A good caregiver has to have another pair of eyes and another pair of ears, basically another layer of protection, because they have a professional duty to protect the rights of the older person that they're looking after. That is why safeguarding and safeguarding policies in every care facility, every hospital, every health center, every social care service is essential. So let me give you some examples. And I have a lawyer sitting here today who will confirm this. No lawyer can turn up at Fox to see one of our residents without making an appointment directly through me. No lawyer, no resident, relative can turn up at Fox with legal documents to ask them to sign unless a senior member of staff is present and we are satisfied that that resident is able to make the decision to sign that document. In addition to which, a member of staff must be present throughout the process. They must know that the client is not being coerced, induced, or forced to sign a legal document. And I'm going to quickly give you some examples. I'm jumping. Right. So, on one occasion, a relative arrives at Fox with a document to transfer the resident's property into her sole name. By the way, she wasn't a daughter or a son, she was a niece, and the person had children. The person in question, the resident in question, has dementia in an advanced state. So there is no way that that resident could have understood what was in that document. On another occasion, a relative turned up with a will and attempted to have it signed after the resident had clearly lost mental capacity to even understand the document. Again, both of them were turned away. One of the most disturbing experiences that I have ever had and that made me even more vigilant was one day I was walking through the facility and we had a visitor with a relative. And she was in the room with the relative, and obviously we give people privacy when they come to visit their relatives. I just happened to step into the room to say hello. Guess what I saw? She had got the resident to practice his signature on a piece of paper, and she herself was now trying to copy the signature. What does that tell you? Why would you be doing that? What would be your reason for wanting to copy the signature of the resident? I'm going to give you another story I will never forget. We encourage relatives to come and visit, but we also encourage relatives to take the resident out, take your family out, take them for a meal, take them for the day, let them spend the day with you, especially when they come from overseas. So this particular lady arrived from the US. She came, and a lovely lady, nothing to complain about. She said she wanted to take her aunt out for the day. So I was very happy, obviously, and I encouraged it. She took her aunt out. The aunt came back later that evening. I was talking to the aunt and she's telling me, I think I've done something silly. So I asked her what she'd done. She told, very quickly, so in any event, very quickly, she'd taken the lady to the bank. She had put her name on the lady's account. The lady had over $1 million EC dollars in her account. We later discovered that she was trying to buy a property in the US. And so obviously that was what the money was about. The bank were amazing. They moved all the money to a fresh account. When she found out about it, she even took the police to the bank. That's how distraught she was. So essentially, folks, you need to be aware and prepared is what I'm saying. Yes, safeguarding, it starts with safeguarding. If you see something isn't right, report it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marie-Therese. And as you noticed, she had more to say, but she had to skip. So maybe when you ask a question, maybe the answer might be in the things that she skipped. So we move on to the other speaker, who is Mrs. Singola Blomquist Williams. You all know her. and she wanted me to say first then that she's a full-time farmer. Well, I mean, it stands. She has evidence because she also got livestock farmer of the year or something like that recently. So Mrs. Singola Blomquist Williams has been an attorney at law for the past 36 years. That is experience, right? 36 years. She has held the position as registrar in Dominica from 1993, I think, to about 1996. She has held the position as magistrate, state attorney, and also she has been in private practice. So we have loads of experience there. She has been advocating for the rights of children and older persons, and she also has extensive experience in making applications for receivership or guardianship for adults and to take care of their affairs, and also in preparation of powers of attorney under the laws of Dominica. So I present to you Mrs. Singola Blomquist Williams.
Thank you very much, Ms. Augustus.
Speaking away.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. It is just great to be here today. I am elated that I was invited to partake in this discussion, which is very, very close to my heart. I started with Ms. Augustus 25 years ago assisting you can't hear? 25 years ago, okay, we started assisting with reform legislation that could assist the elderly. At that time, I was still in my early 30s. So to me, it was, everybody says, well, why are you doing that? And look where I am today. I might be actually a recipient of all of the work that we put in. I believe that as a citizen, we are taught to work hard, save, and when we come to a golden age, we can partake in our hard work. Some of us might not reach that golden age, but we never know what the good Lord has in store for us. So we have to be like the 5 smart virgins and keep our lights blazing. So as a person who has catered for their old age, it is very disheartening to find that when you need that help, sometimes you are without your spouse because they probably have predeceased you, and you are expecting your children to stand in those shoes to help you, and sometimes it is a disappointment. So we as a society must have in place the framework to assist us when we are in our most vulnerable stage. Now the law in its wisdom has in place laws that will assist the senior citizen, who is somebody over the age of 60. Now we don't have one law, we have many laws that would cater for that. So the first one I would want to touch upon is the Constitution, and that is very wide, that you have rights to your liberty, so nobody can force you to be incarcerated or to be put in a mental institution unless they have met those requirements under the Mental Health Act. You have a right to own your property, so you cannot be deprived of that property unless it is through the due process of law. You have a right to your religion. Nobody can force you to practice a faith that you do not want to. And of course, you have a right to be free from discrimination and to degrading and humiliating treatment. I will not expound so much on it. I was just giving that as an overview. Now, in our society, we have the Social Security Act, which caters And the primary objective of the Social Security is to protect contributors against income insecurity coming from contingencies such as old age, invalidity, death, employment, when you lose your employment, injury, or sickness. Now, this only applies to persons who are contributors. If you do not contribute, you do not get. And so I would want to advise, I didn't take that advice, but I'm giving it now, to be a contributor to the Social Security scheme because it works. I'll give you an example. My husband is deceased. I never knew because I was always saying by the time I get old, there will be no Social Security because I thought 30 years was a long time. So I myself did not contribute. And when he died, I found out that he had been contributing right through. And I was a beneficiary of that very Social Security. So I'm going to at least advise you all, do not do the same mistake that I did and contribute because it is helpful in your old age. Now we get on to the biggie, which is the Mental Health Act of Cap 40 of 62 of the revised laws of Dominica. I do not like that title. I believe that sometimes you're not even mentally ill and you have to avail yourself of that act. Doctor, no offense meant. But I believe it should be more of a generic word where it should be a vulnerable person's act that would help us to avail ourselves of the laws without, because some people believe it is a stigma to be saying that you're mentally ill. We have that stigma in Dominica. And sometimes it's just that you're getting older and you're getting more forgetful, as the doctor explained earlier. Now, with that Mental Health Act now, it is to provide, after the judge hears the evidence, so we would have to have a report from somebody like Dr. Wallace saying that you are incapable of taking care of your affairs, and we also have to have somebody moving who say, I will stand in the shoes of that person who can no longer look after themselves. And as Ms. Juncker just said, this has to be a person that you trusted, that was always there for you. And all of a sudden, they end up being vulnerable, and sometimes that's the time we take advantage of them. So we, and I'm sure Mr. Charles will touch on it, how we can tighten that system to make it less difficult for us seniors when we reach that milestone. So the court now will consider that evidence, and armed with that medical report, the court will say, okay, I'm going to grant you, normally the spouse would be a spouse, or if there's no spouse, the next of kin will be the children. I'll grant you this carte blanche to be able to take care. That is a position of trust. You're supposed to take care. And it has heartened me because in recent years, I'm seeing that the court mandates that you have to have a reporting. So you don't only just get the order and you believe you can go and sell the person's property and use the money. You have to report back to the court. So the court will say, this is X amount of money in the bank, there are X amount of properties, you manage it for the welfare of the patient, not for yours. And then you have to report back to the court saying what it is you have done or you are planning to do with that money. Now, there is also, like I said, you have the relatives that could apply it. So there is, just as you have in the Intestacy Act, you would have the spouse, you would have the children, you would have the siblings, you go down the ladder as to who is best capable of doing that. Now, there is also the court now. There's a board. There's supposed to be a board. I don't know if it's functioning. There's a board. And on that board, you're supposed to have at least one lawyer who is in practice for over 7 years. And you also need a medical practitioner. And you need the registrar or the deputy registrar on that board. And that board, which is a very, very good concept, because these people are independent. The court now, they will report back to the court and tell the court, we have visited that patient, and this is the scenario as we speak of the patient's situation. And based on the report, the judge will make his or her decision. I would advocate that we ignite it or reinstate it, whatever we have to do to ensure, because as we speak, I cannot speak about the facts of the case that is worrying me now, but it would be very helpful if the Welfare Association, the Welfare Committee, could be more involved to be able to be the eyes, oh my God, to be the eyes.
Okay, I would do like the Speaker of the House. I will give at least 5 more minutes. Because really it's the legal aspect and it's the core aspect. So we have 5 more minutes.
Yes, I'll try not to, I appreciate, thank you. Now, so yes.
It has been moved on second.
What's your right? What's your right? So I would advocate that we do have this board that is independent to look after us, because it could happen that you get this order from the court and you sell off and use up all that money and you leave that patient in distress, destitute and needy. And that is the worst that can happen to an old person when you are vulnerable, because nobody loves you when you are down. At least if you have a little money, you can say, come and do this for me, the person might come. And as a Christian society, I am imploring each and every one of us to be our brother's keeper, to ensure that the older ones, because one day each one of us will, if we are lucky enough, will get into that situation. I will move on. I will leave the power of attorney to Mr. Charles. So I will move on to one other aspect that I am very happy to say that we have in Dominica, which is the Domestic Violence Act, which protects all our citizens, particularly those in a domestic setting. So we are saying the older ones would also avail themselves of that protection. It's very cheap to initiate. You go to the magistrate's court, you do not have to go to a lawyer. When you want maintenance or anything of that sort, you do not have to go to a lawyer to do that. You can do it yourself. And if you want, you call my chambers, we'll help you with those forms. There's no need for you to go and pay all this money when the court has the forms itself. And once you can prove the basics, you can avail yourself of that remedy. I want to move on also very quickly to the maintenance of parents. In Dominica, I maintain the child when the child is young. Child has to maintain me when I get home. So this, I have just been shown the exact section, which is under the 2023 Act. Okay? We have, subject to subsection 2 and 3, every person who is not a minor, meaning that you are mother or father, has an obligation to the extent that the person is capable of so doing. You must have money to be able to help your parents. But once, your children, sorry, once, your parents. Once you have the capability, you are obligated to maintain both mother and father. Once the father maintains you. You have it, so the roles are reversed. So, and it extends only not only to parents, but to grandparents. And it is to ensure that that person can live a dignified life, because all of us, that's what we want. We want to get out. We have that safety net. We have that safety net. When I get excited, I think. We have that safety net that is built into our legislation, and it's just for us to find it and help those who are older. I have done it myself, where I took a child to court to maintain his mother, and afterwards they had a very good relationship. After when you explain to him, it was not an adversarial thing. We explained to him that you have an obligation, you're better off, so help mommy. And he did. So with that, I would like to end, because I don't want to overstay my welcome. And anything you want to ask, once I am capable of answering in the question section, I will do so. Thank you for your time.
Okay, before Mrs. Williams have to cause problems in the magistrate's court, let me just correct something. Under the Maintenance Act, yes, you can, a parent, you have the obligation, a person is capable, has the obligation to maintain their parents and grandparents who are in need of such maintenance by reason of age, physical or mental infirmity or disability. All right? And a sibling can take a sibling to court, the parent or the grandparent can take the person to court, but then, but the obligation to read grandparents only arises in the event of failure of the grandparent's children to do so, owing to death, physical or mental infirmity or disability. There's nothing that says you must. There are guidelines that we will use to see. So it doesn't mean because the person didn't maintain it doesn't mean that. We have to look, and there's a section that gives us guidelines to look to see whether that person, whether the court can make an order. All right? So it's not, he didn't maintain me, so I can't maintain it. It's not, it's simple like that. This is what that do. It may sound so to the public, but then we look at a wider picture. And also an agency who has care of that parent or grandparent can apply to have a child or children support that parent or grandparent. So not just an individual, also like for instance, Dominican Infirmary or some agency that has charge, the law gives them the, allows them to also apply. So in case you didn't know that, now you know. And it was there before, it was not used as much, and the one before did not have grandparents. Okay, so now we move on to our other panelists. And as you know, our other panelist is Denise Duvernay-Farrell. And Denise Duvernay-Farrell completed her Bachelor of Laws degree in 2022 and has served as legal officer at the National Bank of Dominica, NBD, since 2024. In her role, she provides legal advice and support across various areas of the bank operations. And as we know, one of the major abuses against vulnerable seniors is financial fraud. So Ms. Farrell will tell us what the bank is doing or hoping to do to prevent or reduce the extent of financial fraud against its account holders. And just yesterday, I heard a lady, Ms. Polius, from the ECCB talking about what steps ECCB are going to take with the banks to help to reduce financial fraud. So we hand over now to Ms. Denise Duvernay-Farrell, representing the National Bank of Dominica.
Good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here and to have been invited to partake in this discussion. And I do hope that what is said here enlightens all who are present and all who are listening via the media to make good decisions and to consider what rights and protections you may have hopefully, we all hope that we will reach our ceilings. Yes? Yes. So I'd like to pivot very slightly from what has been discussed thus far and speak specifically on the subtopic, choosing the right tool for financial assistance later in life. So a very important part of planning for our golden years is financial planning. In particular, we ought to consider how our finances will be managed if we're no longer able to manage them entirely on our own. That might be because we have mobility challenges, we are ill, we're not able to leave our homes, we have reduced mental capacity, or simply because it's no longer convenient to manage it yourself. There are tools available to allow an account holder to authorize other persons to manage or to assist with managing their bank or financial affairs. And the purpose of my short contribution is to encourage us to think carefully about the consequences of choosing one tool over the other. So this presentation will compare three common tools. We will compare mandates, also known as letters of authorization, powers of attorney, and joint accounts. I will not spend too much time on powers of attorney, as Mr. Charles will address this in greater detail later on. However, it is important to compare it briefly with the other options, as it will also carry its own legal and practical consequences in terms of banking. So firstly, we will discuss what is the mandate or the letter of authorization. So a mandate, it simply allows an account holder to authorize another person or third party to withdraw funds from their account. Now I say withdraw because as a matter of policy, the bank will not permit a mandate to allow any other or greater transactional authority. So the individual who the mandate has been granted to will only be able to withdraw and deposit, yes, into the individual's account. So for example, a person authorized under a mandate cannot request mobile banking access, they cannot request a card, they cannot request check, they may not be able to sign checks, those kinds of things, so they will only be able to withdraw from the individual's account. This is a useful option for persons needing help with everyday expenses. So you need help paying your bills, you don't want to come into town anymore to come into the bank, you want somebody to buy your medication for you at Jolly's, and simple things like that. So that is an everyday expense. Some important characteristics of mandates are: one, they terminate. So the bank requires that the account holder state a termination date on which a third party's provision will end. So we have a sample mandate at the bank, and it will have a date. You will be required to place a date on there that whereby the person's permission will no longer continue. So let us say December 2026, December 31st, 2026. The person will not be able to come in and withdraw their account on January 1st. Yes? And finally, they end on death or loss of mental capacity. So once your account holder dies or they lose their mental capacity and the bank is aware of that, the authority will no longer be relied upon by the bank. So even if the date that you place on the mandate is December 31st, 2026, and God forbid you die on December 30th, 2026, on December 31st, they still will not be able to come in and withdraw because you have passed. Secondly, we'll discuss powers of attorney. So power of attorney will appoint an agent to legally act on the behalf of the donor. So the person who gives the power of attorney is the donor, and the person who has the authority under the power of attorney will be the agent. So the donor will grant the agent authority to manage their affairs, essentially. So that will be further discussed by Mr. Charles. What is important to note here is that any authority that the bank will not allow under a mandate can be placed under a power of attorney. So if an individual wishes to allow the agent to request mobile banking access or to request a card or to be able to sign checks, that authority will have to be given through a power of attorney as a matter of policy at the bank. So the mandate will only allow withdrawals, and if any other wider transactional authority is requested by the account holder, that will need to be given through a power of attorney. This option is appropriate when the account holder or the individual wishes the helper to undertake more consequential tasks on their behalf rather than simply withdrawing cash for limited or day-to-day purposes. This will be discussed later on by Mr. Charles in more detail, but I would like to mention it also. In Dominica, powers of attorney end upon death or loss of mental capacity of the principal, and Dominica does not recognize those powers of attorney that go beyond that. So those would be enduring or supreme powers of attorney. We recognize those, and so the bank also does not recognize those. Finally, we will discuss one that I like the most, joint accounts, because we see that that can pose an issue if some persons are not aware of the implications of a joint account. So a joint account adds another individual or other individuals as account holders. So unlike a mandate or power of attorney, the other person is not just assisting, they're not authorized, they are joint holders of the account. So they have equal access subject to the signing authority of the account, and they are equally responsible for the account. Another characteristic that is most important is that joint accounts are generally treated as carrying the rights of survivors. That simply means that if one joint account holder passes away, the other account holder is assumed to be now the sole owner of the account. So you can imagine if I am 75, and I come in and I place my caretaker as a joint account holder. I come into the bank and I say, I would like to place this person as a joint account holder, and God forbid, I die, and my children are fighting with the caretaker, because the caretaker said, well, she make me the account holder too, so the money is mine. And I have $1 million in my account, and all my children are distraught. Okay? So that is also very important to take note. That is what the part that I like the most and support most, because that is that has the most severe implication for seniors making that kind of decision. This is an excellent option, however, if the account holder intends for the joint account, for the person that they're adding onto their account, to inherit the money. So if I say I want my child to be my joint account holder when I die, then the money will become my child's. So there's no issue with that. But it's important to be aware of the implications of it before you actually make the decision. So there are some other risks. There is also a garnishment or attachment risk. So under the civil procedure rules, where an individual has a judgment debt against them, the court, the person to whom the judgment is owed, can apply to courts to garnish that person's account. Now, if that person has a joint account, the joint account can also be garnished. So let's say I add my caretaker to my account, and my caretaker, somebody takes my caretaker to court. The court rules against the caretaker, and the court can send the judgment creditor to my account, because that person is now a joint account holder of mine, and they garnish my $1 million of my account for somebody else's debt. So that is also very important. Finally, I will conclude. Before selecting any arrangement, persons should consider what their objective is. Is the goal convenience, or is it shared ownership? Should the arrangement continue if the senior person loses capacity? It's important to know that at present, the only financial tool that accommodates access post loss of mental capacity is the joint account. Because mandates end upon death or loss of mental capacity, and powers of attorney also end upon death or loss of mental capacity. The safest choice depends on the individual's objective. If the person simply needs help paying bills, a joint account may be too vast, maybe too blunt. If the person just wishes for someone to manage their broader property affairs, a mandate might be too narrow. They may have to opt for a power of attorney. So if the person is also trying to plan for future capacity, it's also important to note that at present, there's only the joint account. I conclude.
Okay, for those of you probably who don't know much about garnish, because we are garnish when it's food time, you can garnish dishes, c'est pas garnish salad. That garnish is they can take your money. Okay? So if you have a joint account with someone and there's a debt and they're supposed to take the money from the person, because that person is also an account holder, they can take your money, well, because the person joint and their name is on it too. Also, what you're saying is that if you die, the money belongs to the other party on the joint account. That is what she was saying. In case you didn't get it, I want to repeat it so that you can get it. Also, I would like maybe later for you to ask about scammers and digital privacy and online scams. I didn't hear that. I was hoping I would get something about that. So don't click on the link alone. All right, so don't click on the link. And also, you may want to know what it is that the bank does when they notice certain things, certain red flags. A young boy coming with an elderly to the counter, or somebody who doesn't seem to know too much of what they're doing coming to the bank with somebody else. I also wanted to know whether, well, we'll probably look at that in the questions. I'm sure some of you have that question. So later, expect more questions on the bank, because that is where some of the action takes place. All right? Okay, so thank you very much, Mrs. Dennis Duvernay-Farrell. We're going on to the next financial institution represented here. As we know, maybe half of Dominica or three-quarters of Dominica belong to a credit union. So we have a representative from the National Cooperative Credit Union, who is Nakisha Etienne. And she's a staff member of the National Cooperative Credit Union, and she has been for the past 15 years, and she has been in positions where she interacts with the public, namely in the loans department, and presently she works as a member services representative. In her role, she will have interacted with seniors, and she will tell us what NCCU has done and continue to do for the elderly in terms of preventing and reducing the occurrence of financial fraud of their accounts. And also, I'm not sure if she has that, but one of the things that people need to be aware of in terms of the credit union is that they are unique in that if you put that person as beneficiary, 10,000 units can come is the person that you put as beneficiary. So I hope she talks about that so that we understand the importance of beneficiary.
Good morning to my esteemed panelists and to the representatives from the Dominica Council on Aging and to members of the audience. My name is Nakisha Etienne, and I'm here today as an NCCU representative. Like Mr. Augustus was saying, I've worked for the past 15 years in customer interface positions. So I've had the experience of dealing with members as they come in the member services department and the loans department. And one of the things that is important to the NCCU is the rights and protections and financial protection of our elderly members, our senior members. Because really, this is the subsection of our membership that spearheaded the cooperative movement in Dominica and it supported the cooperative movement. They're the reason why the NCCU is what it is today. And so the financial protection of our senior members is so important. One of the things I wanted to discuss today is financial planning with a view to aging. So it is very important that we all plan for aging. Like Ms. Farrell was saying, we want to put things in place. And at the credit union, we have services that can help us to do that. So we have the member retirement accounts. We also have final expense plans like the FIP and the FBI, that is the family indemnity plan and the family bereavement insurance. I want to talk about the practical services that we provide for our elderly members, how we support them as they come into their daily transactions. And also, I want to talk lastly on options available for members that are unable to visit and touch a little bit on the importance of updating your account and speaking on the beneficiary card as well. So as it relates to the member retirement account, the MRA, the member retirement account, is an account we have, and it's not like any other savings account. It's locked in, so you cannot simply come in to withdraw. The nature of the account, it discourages withdrawals. You open an MRA account by walking into any NCCU branch with your birth certificate if you are a member, and your deposits are capped at $1,000 every month. The interest rate is 4%, and what will happen is, as you save, you will accumulate a lump sum. We will give dividends, and at the end, when it is ready for maturity, that would be at age 55 or at age 60, depending on the choice of the account holder. You will have a lump sum available to you then. And so it's a good thing you can do. It's a simple thing that our members can do to help plan for their retirement. We also have the MRA Gold, and that runs from age 60 to 70. And it's the same. The interest rate is the same, and the deposits are capped at $1,000 a month. And it allows you to save in that last 10 years, that last period of time, so that you can prepare for a time of life that might be difficult financially because of illness or needing to be cared for by another individual. There are expenses that come up when you retire and when you are done with working full time. And it is important that we plan for those. And so because of knowing that the NCCU had put the MRA in place, the family indemnity plan and the family bereavement insurance, those two plans, they are final expense plans. Okay, sorry. Closer to my mouth. Okay, sorry about that. The final, go over the MRA? Okay, okay. So the member retirement account, it is a savings account that is built specifically for retirement. And so it's 4% interest rate. The deposits are capped at $1,000 monthly. It has flexible maturity, so you can mature at age 55 or at age 60. It is up to the member to decide. The MRA Gold, it's something that you apply for at age 60. If you are a member who has already passed age 60, you can apply for it once you are not 70 years of age. We have the final expense plans like the FBI and the FIP. So those final expense plans, what they are is plans that you can sign up for that will allow you to put 6 members of your family. So that would be yourself, children under age 25 who are unmarried. You have in-laws, parents. These people can be, yourself included, and 6 other individuals can be on this plan. And the plans range in different tiers, but you pay a monthly installment, an affordable low monthly installment. And this low monthly installment will afford you a lump sum of cash if the person, any one of the individuals on this plan passes away. And so it starts at $15 a month under the family bereavement insurance plan. So it's a very, very small, affordable installment that our members can afford. And then one of the higher installments is $158, and that payout is $30,000 in the event of one of the individuals on that plan passing away. So it's very important that we plan for these things. It's not something that we like to discuss. No one likes to talk about that. But it is important to plan for it and to be prepared. One of the practical services that we provide for our elderly members is that we have 2 dedicated teller lines every day to deal with our elderly membership. And so these tellers are not just doing transactions, cash transactions. They are trade. So they are paying attention, they are alert, they're looking out for things that may be alarming. And so we want to make sure that our elderly members are not suffering any form of financial abuse. And so when you come into the NCCU, the senior teller lines that are there, they are dedicated to the senior members. And so we want our members to take advantage of that. There is seating available if someone is unable to stand, he can
give them a seat, you can, take them to the side. We know that the queue outside of credit union is usually long before we open, so we do pay attention to our elderly membership. We do take them on the side, and if they have mobility issues, we allow them to come in and have a seat. And on the discussion of keeping our accounts current, it is important for everyone, especially the elderly members, to make sure that they have their accounts up to date, because we need to be able to reach them and give them anything. So we would like for them to update their information, their number, update their address. It's important that we reach them. And also their beneficiary card. With the NCCU, our beneficiary card takes precedence over a will, like Mr. Augustine was saying. So if you open an account at the NCCU, and the NCCU does have quite a large population of Dominica. We have 3/4 of the population of Dominica, like Mr. Augustine was saying. So it is important for you to remember who your beneficiary is. You don't want an instance where your beneficiary is someone who you have passed away already. You don't want an instance where it's a case where you don't want to update the beneficiary, because if you pass away, who is listed on your beneficiary card, that is the person who will get the funds on your account regardless of what the will states. Yes. Okay. And then finally, I want to wrap up by stating that individuals who have authority to operate accounts, because we spoke a bit, the panelists spoke a bit about having power of attorney, receivership, letters of authority. So individuals who have the authority to operate another person's account, we do want these people to make themselves available. The NCC wants to urge these individuals to make themselves available to be able to assist these elderly. Stay in touch with them. Be aware of what it is they need. Because if you are absent, you can subject them to financial abuse and any undue influence. And so please, the well-being of that person is paramount to your assignment. So please be in touch with the individual and be aware of their financial needs.
Thank you, Ms. Etienne. And I know some people must be asking, I'll ask it for them in case, what it is that the banks do, we'll ask that later, to ensure that their employees are not the ones who are doing anything to the funds of the account holders. Because you hear a lot of these stories, so we hope you can speak to that. What are you all putting in place to ensure that this doesn't happen, or if it happens, how is it dealt with? Okay, so this is something that, you might not come in and say it, but as out of the bank, we will ask the question, because these are stories that we hear. All right, so we're moving on. Thank you very much. I like to see the crowd. I hope that you all are listening and taking notes. And if you want water, we have water at the back. You can move to the back and get some water. We have water. So keep hydrated, and as we continue with Mr. Ainsworth Irish. Mr. Ainsworth Irish is a retired police superintendent, having served 40 years in law enforcement, and he is a former president of the Grotto Home for the Homeless, known as the Community Hostels Inc., but we always say Grotto. He is a national director of Special Olympics, Dominica, having worked with these athletes since 1995, and is also the second vice president for the Dominica Council on Aging. He has been a member for the past 10 years. He holds a certificate in criminology from UWI. So Mr. Irish will present on his experience with matters of abuse against the elderly and how the Dominica Council on Aging has handled some of these complaints and what are their plans to address these issues. Okay, so I hand you over now to Mr. Irish, who will speak from the podium. Yes.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. And even before I go into my presentation, I have to say I'm so extremely delighted that Miss Augustus took on this initiative in collaboration with the Dominica Council on Aging. As a matter of fact, at our AGM earlier this year in May, she did give the hint that, you know, because of this burning issue, there would be a panel coming in place to ensure that, you know, a topic like that would be discussed at large measure. My esteemed panelists, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, of course, I know Mr. Lawrence, the president of the Dominica Council on Aging, is listening someplace. He's not here now. Also, our immediate past president, Ophelia Mari, is here. I notice Ambassador Felix Gregoire is here. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I'm extremely proud this morning, immensely so, to represent the Dominica Council on Aging at this very auspicious occasion where we discuss the legal rights and protection of senior citizens. The Dominica Council on Aging, of course, the Dominica Council of Aging was established as a voluntary non-profit organization in 1993. It became formally registered under the Companies Act of Dominica on the 18th of June 2004. The Council serves as a premier advocacy organization for older persons' rights in Dominica and should remain as a vanguard representing the elderly persons on various issues related to their legal rights and protection of seniors, which is, of course, the core mandate. And so the Dominica Council on Aging has become the go-to medium for many aggrieved persons and parties on anything that relates to and borders on the deprivation of their rights of the older persons. Notwithstanding the lack of the adequate tools and resources, we are determined to continue working to fight, to expose, the unequal rights and injustice that these senior citizens meet, unfortunately. So the event or the initiative being pursued here should serve as a clarion call for state policymakers, legislative authorities, as well as private and corporate bodies and able-bodied seniors to ensure that able-bodied persons to ensure the concerns of citizens. Even the youth should be involved to get ready to assist in a positive way to work with our seniors. Coincidentally, the Dominica Council on Aging is hosting this initiative at a time when the United Nations have given the green light for the ad hoc working group of member states. And it's very interesting, that this thing is being highlighted here today. This consultation, as I like to describe it, developing on the, legal, on the Convention on the Rights of Other Persons. The Dominica Council of Aging intends to be part of the process that urges the relevant state representative to get on board. Whatever comes out of the event, this would be a necessary tool to ensure that, the convention is recognized. Commendations are in order for all those who have played a very vital role in this regard. You would have heard before that apart from the Mental Act and the Maintenance Act, there is no direct legislation giving full and direct protection to our senior citizens. However, I must report that Dominica is a signatory to some of the convention that speaks to the rights of senior citizens, which mandates the promotion of human rights for all without distinction. Rather, there is non-binding principles which speaks to core areas for senior citizens. The right for food, water, shelter, clothing, and health. And of course, the exploitation of physical and mental abuse, you would have heard. Therefore, our main role is to advocate for elderly persons, improve the healthcare access, and to ensure the economic security for our Dominica aging population. Through several targeted areas, we have been pushing for separate legislation to protect the elderly from discrimination, abuse, and financial fraud. And you heard from the bank, the situation that exists where persons, and even from our legal people, persons have the opportunity sometimes to manipulate the elderly in our society and take advantage of them. Our elders, like anyone else, have the right under the Constitution of Dominica, the supreme law of the land, for dignity and respect. In more recent times, the Dominica Council of Aging have received several complaints from the private citizens or senior citizens and relatives who abuse them or take advantage of our gems in society. And recently we had a situation where a gentleman was about 92 years, he died now, may he so rest in peace. And his nephew came to his home and told his wife, of course, and that he wanted to take his uncle for a ride, took his vehicle and drove him to the traffic department, and of course, even before, had the man to sign something transferring the vehicle to his nephew's name. Of course, the old man was, not in the proper frame of mind. He just signed the document. And lo and behold, some 3 months later, when the wife went to the traffic department to have the vehicle license because her son was visiting from England, and then when she went to the traffic department, they told her, but Miss Madam, this vehicle does not belong to you. And the lady was very shocked, and surprised at this thing. So these are the things that happen when, we are aging. Persons use the opportunity to, to have the tendency to abuse the rights and take advantage of the situation. So we have to be very mindful of that. And of course, all the panelists alluded to that fact. This is a critical area of our lives when we need to ensure that there's always this situation, something is put in place, the measures are put in place and the mechanisms to ensure that, that sort of situation is removed or reduced from our, from our society, or the sort of acts against our senior citizens. In that regard, the council condemned the activity, and we hastened to investigate when reports are made. Of course, the matter was eventually reported to the police, but of course, because of the family ties, eventually the matter was settled in a very amicable way. So these are some of the problems that we are faced with. So laws need to be specific for the elderly as we make enforcement, that will make enforcement easier and applicable. We believe that trained law enforcement officers should be made available, as the elderly cases of abuse are slightly different from the conventional common abuse, if you will. This would help to fall in line with the international community in terms of having Elderly Justice Act tailored to suit our needs. And I can go on to say that in contemporary times, varied forms of elderly abuse range from physical, psychological, and financial. We must dispel the notion that older persons are useless in our society. Therefore, the public should be vigilant and report cases of abuse against our elderly. It is very important to note that seniors are a specialized group with varied ages and specific concerns or needs, of most of which are not considered when dealing with issues such as guardianship. And of course, Ms. John Kay alluded to that. Guardianship, wills, power of attorney, among others. Mr. Charles, of course, will speak to that in greater details. It is for these reasons mentioned that we must embrace the opportunity at forums like this to be the vanguards in ensuring that care and protection of elderlies, they deserve, their rights should not be denied or diminished. These violations cannot be condoned. It is for this reason again that the Dominica Council Aging advocates for a full-scale national mentorship program to guide and assist caregivers and persons who look after our elderlies at the homes, at institutions, and other areas. One would expect the main thrust to be ensuring that professional approach in dealing with these seniors who deserve the best care. Yes. So finally, I'll have to skip some things there, but I hope the information that we are gathering here today will not just go as information upload. There is a lot we need to do in our society, and today I think is a very important aspect in our development. And again, I want to say that the Dominica Council Aging continues to champion for the cause and the rights of the elderly, and full marks to Ms. Gloria Augustus for the tremendous work she's been doing as a champion of children and young persons and the elderly. Thank you very much, and of course I'm here. Any more questions? I still have 3 pages, but time is up.
Thank you, Mr. Irish. And I just want Mr. Irish mentioned 2 laws, but the overall, all laws of Dominica are for everybody in Dominica, and even those who are just visiting the jurisdiction. So they are covered by that. And also, in terms of specific laws or laws that refer to seniors, we have Maintenance Act, we have the Domestic Violence Act, we have the Constitution, we have the Mental Health Act, and Social Security. Okay, so seniors are covered, but what we want to look at is the laws there. Are they adequate? Are they in the right place? And how we can revise and update them. So we are moving on to our last panelist before you get a chance to ask your questions. So I hope you have your questions ready. And the last panelist is Mr. Eliu John Charles. Eliu John Charles? How is it? John Eliu Charles. Okay. So many of us may know him as, or many people may know him as a teacher, because he is first of all, an educator. However, since 2001, Mr. John Eliu Charles has been an attorney at law. He also has a master's degree in legislative drafting and public law, and he has provided legislative drafting services and related legal services as a legal consultant to the governments of Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, Dominica, Guyana, St. Kitts and Nevis, and St. Lucia. He holds several other professional and academic qualifications. He's a former Chief Parliamentary Counsel of Dominica. Presently, he is the managing partner of the law firm Charles Juris Chambers. So we're going to hear from Mr. John Eliu Charles.
Good morning, everybody. Okay, let me see if I can navigate through tabs. A lot of the former speakers loaded a lot of things on my back. But as a cousin of mine who's now dead, she once said, my back is broad. Any airplane, any jet plane can land on my back. I'm broad back. So no problem, I will navigate through this. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to tell you anything new. I'm simply going to repackage some of the things that you have heard. First, elderly are human beings, and therefore they're entitled to be treated with respect and a minimum degree of dignity and love, because they are human beings. So therefore, the human rights and the rights of the elderly is everybody's business. We have to appreciate that. Secondly, you will talk about the autonomy of an individual. An adult person with capacity can make decisions for themselves. And sometimes they may not be around, and they might need persons to assist them. It's not because they have a disability or an incapacity, and they depend on a legal document, most cases, and sometimes we go into informal kind of relationship where people do things for us, collect my rent, take care of my house. But many of us fail to realize that these are legal relations. And this agent or that simple person, friend, daughter, child, son, brother, couple, nenen, enter relationship with third persons, and they may become liable. And therefore we try to set that up. Third thing, when money is concerned, that can bring enmity. You might be collecting somebody's rent and you fail to keep proper records, although you're passing the money on to the person, particularly you send the money overseas, so you have to change EC dollars to US dollars, and the money they're getting is much smaller than what you're collecting, so you collect 600 EC dollars, you send that to them. You don't get $600, you get a small amount in US. That can create difficulty and serious difficulties. So we are aware of that. And because these things create difficulty, the relationships between the competent older person who appoints you and yourself can change. And sometimes it can change in a very bad way. So we have to be mindful of that. So therefore, I would advise that persons who are going to take responsibilities to do anything for elder persons should get a legal document signed by that person, setting out the scope of your powers, whether it is limited or whether it is specific, or whether it is broad or general. And normally we do that and we call that a power of attorney. But strangely, we do not have a specific act that deals with power of attorney, because the power of attorney aspect is under the common law principle of agency. And this power of attorney is governed by agency's law, as has been highlighted by the representative of the National Bank. That's a certain events that will bring an end to that relationship, death or incapacity. And just for clarification, a power of attorney is a legal document that allows a competent person, whom we call the principal, to appoint someone we call the attorney or the agent to make decisions about the property and finances of that person. So therefore, the agent makes decisions on behalf of the donor. We used to say legal term like the principal or the donor. But central of that relationship is communication. And that is what the bank probably highlighted. There must be communication between the person who giving that power and the person receiving that power. So the communication ends on death, and the communication ends when the person has no capacity to communicate. But Dr. Wallace gave us a way out. She did indicate to us you have different level of capacity. But the common law does not make provision for that. So if we have to make provision for that different level of capacity, in the sense that the person may understand the act, but the person may not be able to take care of them normal day to day. You can have situations like that. I'm not a medical expert, but that was presented to us when Dr. Wallace made a contribution. So therefore, there may be need for the intervention of jumping into reform. There may be need for the intervention of the government, not just because they want to clarify that point, because the situation that we are now faced with the elderly has grown to a level where public intervention by the state becomes imperative. Should it be left to institutions to develop administrative measures, whether it is where you provide care for the elderly or whether the elderly has the money to make administrative policies to provide for the care of persons and to provide for or to prevent abuse. So there may be a need for intervention, but I want to caution you from my own experience, legal reform is not an easy thing in Dominica. Legal reform is not an easy exercise in Dominica. One, while we have a law revision commission, Dominica doesn't have, as far as I know, a law reform commission. Because from the presentation that has been made this morning, you realize that there are many things you have to take into consideration when you're going to reform the law. And you will need experts and informed persons who can write paper, get involved in discussions, and realize what is the scope and extent you have to get involved in legal reform. I don't want to belittle the whole issue of the rise of the elderly, but let me just give you a little example of legal reform. In 1998, the hospitality industry, being led by a very prominent individual, wanted to change the law dealing with public holidays so that persons would work on Sundays. So what do? Do you give an exception for the definition of public holidays, or do you redefine public holidays? What is the implication, or what are the implications on the church, social relationships, and so forth? So that created a problem, and the cost involved in doing the research. From what I know, an estimate of that exercise was $20,000, and they were told so, and they dropped the project. I know that's been changed. I don't know how it will change. And some legal reform involves simple questions, but these simple questions might be deceptively complex. And the most common example we have was with electoral reform. How do we remove the name of dead persons from the list? Bearing in mind, a lot of Dominicans die outside Dominica, and we have no record of the death of these persons in the civil registry in Dominica. How do we deal with that? And we saw the difficulties and the challenges we had to deal with. Another question, yes, they had to address was, how do we deal with residency? Notwithstanding the fact that this has been addressed in our constitution about the legal learning, and we saw the difficulties we have. So I just want to mention to you that it can be a difficult challenge. However, you should not give up on that. And to end this, I want to encourage the Council on Aging to continue the advocacy. I want to encourage us to realize the issue of the elderly abuse is everybody's business, and we can identify it by certain red flags. And if you go in 1 minute, let me just rush about 5 red flags. 5 red flags. One child out of many unlawfully tried to access their mother's account or their father's account. And what they do, they provide an email address. And the bank is not conscious of that. And they get information about the person's account. Next thing they can do, they can seek to change, that was highlighted by Ms. John Kevin, change the person's estate plan. And some of the estate plans are based on financial and legal advice, as we saw in the case of selling the house and so forth, as we saw in the case of adding people to the account. They can go and they can play on the mind of the donor by making false allegations about the persons they have appointed as their attorney. Say the person is stealing your money or doing whatever it is, or misusing the money, making unlawful use of the balance in the account. Or if they have somebody taking care of the elderly, they disrupt that home care arrangement. So these are signs. And then they isolate. The most effective and vicious form of elderly abuse is seeking to isolate that elderly person from their friends or their family members or other long-term financial advisors. So there are red signs, but some of us have heard that statement before. This kind of signs, they talk about inheritance impatience. Inheritance, patience, and it is driven. I don't know. The last one I will end up with when I tell them the street packaging is to think of the some of midnight rovers that say, "Oh, fam, you might put your mama." I say, "When you just change mama and put papa and just change farm and put now," and you understand the whole aspect that we as a society need to bring forward the values that we grew up with, where we care for each other and we love each other. Thank you.
So you've heard our panelists. They've given you much food for thought, and maybe there are things they didn't say that you want to hear about. So now it's your time to participate. And what we'd like you to do is, does this mic work? I have 2 mics, but I need to know whether this one. No, the one I have working, but there's another one. Where's the fellow in the red shirt that was helping us? I don't know his name. Hello. Hi. Check for me if this mic works. Yeah. Okay, so we have this other mic that we'll pass on. So put up your hand if you want to ask a question. Try and make your question be as clear as possible. And if there's a particular panelist that you would like to answer the question, you can also refer to them. Maybe you forgot their name, say the black shirt or the red dress or the, All right, so question time, because the whole purpose is to educate you and also to hear from you to know what we need to do for the future to change things for the better. Yes? So, Vijay, there's somebody there.
Thank you. Good afternoon, morning. I'm sorry. Is that better? Okay, see, I was holding. Okay, the lady with the red card. Yeah, 1 minute indulgence to thank the
Oh, they're not timing you.
Oh,
But then,
okay.
it doesn't mean that you have to stay.
Well, I live in football. Red card is a very dangerous thing nowadays. So I have to say. Okay, I came here really very anxious because this is something I'm passionate about. Abuse, a lot of abuse I see.
Okay. Let me give you mine. Mine seems to have more power.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. And I am pleasantly and happy. the only word for it, to hear the presentations we received, because a lot of my concerns were explained, and so doesn't mean I haven't got more questions, but I am very, very relieved that I came. And I think a lot of people have missed out by not coming to this event. I also want to say a special thank you and commendation to the DC Dominica Council of Aging for holding this discussion, providing this forum. And in particular, people like Gloria and Singular and Craig, who have been working on this from what they said for years on aging. Because I know from experience, organizations get nominations and awards for doing things, but it's the people in the organization. If they don't have good people who are pushing and working, it doesn't happen. And I have watched Gloria Augustus from the side, and I have seen her, and as somebody called her the lady with the love for the heart. Yes, it's not always the people who get awards on National Day that are doing and moving things. And I believe in giving people awards, flowers before they die. So thank you very much, Gloria. So Flax is another good one. I listened to their program on Wednesday, very enlightening. I learned a lot. Mr. Charles, you can see he's our archive historian for a thing. And the financial institutions, you are the ones that was coming to give the most boost. But I must say, I was very, very pleased with your presentation. Thank you very much. Okay. But I do have a lot of questions still. And so I would like to say my questions. And because I have a lot of questions which cover a lot of people, I will just say the questions so that when you're answering, you might be able to cover more than one in your thing. And again, with the red card, I also have some proposals, but I will deal with the questions, only question. At the end, if we haven't dealt with proposals, I will raise it. Okay, number one, I want some clarification. Well, what is trust, a trust versus the guardianship, which is what guardianship receivership? I'm not quite clear about the difference, because I tried to I went to a bank to try, and a lawyer, to try to find out about trust, setting up a trust, and they told me the laws in Dominica about trust are practically non-existent because it's so old. And the only thing that I could resort to is putting the person on, another person on the account for event of death, which is a dicey business. I mean, when your children or whoever might be good friends now, but when they get married and your spouse gets involved, it's another story. So a trust, so a bank account is a risk you take, and they have mentioned this. So I don't know what's the difference between the trust and guardianship, if that's a similar sort of thing. So that's number one. Number two, with regard to the scammers and how the banks deal with their financial system, I'm happy you all have things in place, and I give credit union commendation. I have a personal experience where I went to the bank, credit union, with a friend who wanted to do some transaction. She wasn't an older person. She just needed some clarification. And she called me to come and explain to her. And the clerk at the teller told me, would you move away from, please, I can only deal with that person. And I was so impressed. So credit union went them. Again, another one in credit union, the beneficiary provision. I would like either the COA or let us put a proposal and appeal to National Bank. I don't know if we can do it to Republic because Republic is a foreign head office. But I asked, why don't you have a beneficiary provision in National Bank for people who die? And they told me the regulations don't allow some kind of permission saying. Well, we need to recommend, we need to make a committee go to that bank board and talk to them about what we want. Because most of their money is in seniors' money that's inside there. So people who retire, their gratuity and so on. Again, I like the fact that there are special provisions for seniors. The line not enough, but what I would like to also suggest to take a bit further than the credit union's idea of move away from accounting. Sometimes provide a private room. I have been to a bank where they brought in a lady to talk about some suspected fraud in her van, and they came outside and sat this lady and telling her, and she couldn't hear properly, so she had to talk louder. And I thought that was, in a way that was disrespectful. So once the person is, you recognize the person's hard of hearing or has an issue, please bring her into an office. And it's a little thing to provide some privacy. Okay, the hospital psychiatry, I'm happy to hear what's going on, but I want to clarify, I was told long ago that the old regulations, legal regulations, for the psychiatric roles is still under the prison. Because years ago, that's what I was told, you can verify or not. Years ago, the prison psychiatry was considered like a form of going to prison. And it's not under the hospital per se. I may be wrong, I hope I'm wrong, or it has been changed. So if this isn't so, that might account for a lot of the disconnect between medical and things. I don't know. I was told so. I was once helping with an investigation with the hospital, and that's where I found out that information. So I don't know if it's still like that. Funeral expenses, funeral grants. Can you just tell me what do you need to provide as proof to collect the money for the funeral? Because I know Social Security also gives a grant for funeral. Does that mean if you have that, it conflicts, or it will mean? Well, anyway, you clarify me. Okay. I've heard of America has reverse mortgages. We don't have that in Dominica. I don't know why, or something like that can be done. Because with a reverse mortgage, you have people who have a lot of assets. They have a lot of property, but they have no money, no cash. And they have all that property there, which is going to owe somebody else, but they cannot afford to buy groceries. And I think the reverse mortgage is based on the principle you use your assets to get cash through. So that is another area. Sorry, I hope I'm not in wrong. Okay. Red card not working. Okay. I would like to, yes, I'm sorry, I didn't say my name. I'm Cecilia Martin. I'm a Vibrant Senior Citizens. Vibrant brought, we had a speaker, a lady who spoke about Yes We Care, came to speak to us. It was a good talk, but I was horrified, shocked and horrified to find out, because it is a government agency, they only work from Monday to Friday. That's when they get paid. So we asked what happened to the people at the weekend. And they said, well, they hope, they try to get neighbors to it. I said, what? What about the village council? What about the police? There should be some welfare, social mechanism so that these people are taken care of at weekends. How can you give them food for the week, and at weekends they on their own, nobody to take it? And I'm happy there's a law you can take children to take care of it. That is one I got to tell my children. Okay. Okay, I think I finished. Oh yes, also inform the police, I think. It's a good thing to be alert for people who come and try to scam for licensing. Thank you.
I'll be brief, very brief. My name is Angela James. My name is Angela James. I'm 94 years old, and I feel like a fraud. To me, all the questions that have been posed, I seem to have them under wraps. First and foremost, I have a power of attorney, two of them in fact, my daughter, my niece here. so they can deal with those side of the matters. At my time of life, I pay my bills, all my bills online. So this is of me having to go down to the different organizing merchants. I don't have to do that. In my bedroom, I get all of the bills, I pay them. However, I have 2 carers because I'm not able to do the things that any normal, I don't know about a 94-year-old, but I'm too stiff, arthritis, too much arthritis to manage to roll a broom or a mop. So I'm forced to have carers. I have a carer midweek and I also have one more on the weekend. The midweek one I can afford. She's excellent. I've never seen anybody like that. But she has sticky fingers. That is a problem. On the strength of that, because I don't want to lose her, because people of her caliber are hard to find, I've installed cameras. That hopefully will be a deterrent, hoping. But not in every room. For instance, the bathroom doesn't have a camera, nor does the bedroom where she occupies. And believe it or not, something's gone missing in the bathroom. Because I know where I put things, and suddenly they're not there. The weekenders are people that come, I think, because they're opportunists. In fact, the weekender I have was due to come with me today. And because she was so adamant not being here, she was very firm, and I thought she must be scared of something, or she's scared to meet somebody, or she's doing something untoward that is going to mess her up. So I had to ask my faithful friend here. She stands in at all occasions whenever I'm in a mix. And you know, she's a family friend, and she's always there for me. So she stepped in at the last minute. But as I said, I've got things under control. However, as I get older, and I will, before I forget, one of the carers said to me, I said to her, when I die, who do you notify first? She said, oh, the police. Now, I am wondering if there's any truth in that. Because how can the police certify that I'm dead? Are they qualified to do so? And can they? I don't know. The police, I said, no, I would hope you did, certify, tell my family first. And they would then get a doctor. I actually have a doctor in my family, and they would certify that I'm dead. But you cannot tell me the police. And she's very firm on that. The police, as far as I know, the police. So just